State, the Seminoles, finished season undefeated after winning the ACC championship game over Louisville. But a lot of consternation about their final ranking sitting there at number 5. Did Florida State get snubbed?
So let's just, we've had this conversation, JP, and I said, hey, I even said, I want to see how Florida State looks without their quarterback, right? My issue, though, is the inconsistency in the contradiction that the committee has continually proven to have year over year, week over week. We've effectively just said, is the committee even experts? Do we agree that they're experts or not?
Your athletic director's on there.
Okay, well, we've effectively just handed over the rights to subjectively choose the best 4. How often are we wrong on the best 4? I mean, even I take Washington and Oregon. I mean, Washington was a 10-point dog in that game, right? Lot of logic, lot of people thought Oregon was the better team, and guess what? Washington beat them again.
Sure.
So to me, it's like when you have this conversation, the best 4, there's a contradiction in and of itself. Georgia's one of the best 4 teams in college football.
Right.
Why aren't they in by that logic? And I get it. You absolutely have to factor in. I know Florida State's not the same team. I get that. But they still ran the table. They're undefeated. They're a conference champion. They've earned the right. If they get dogged in the playoff, that's fine. They earned the right to get dogged in the playoff. They also earned the right to have a chance to compete for a national title. That's my issue, is there's been such a lack of consistency in logic. I just can't understand how we continue to do this moving forward.
I mean, I think your logic is flawed, and that's where I'm going to start there. They've earned the right. How would they have earned the right? Because they went 13-0?
Yeah,
but who
exactly.
Did they play en route to the 13-0? Like, that's the biggest question for me, because I can look at all the teams that made it into the college football playoff, and I'm glad you brought up Washington. How do we know that they belong in there? Well, they beat Oregon twice. What was Oregon? They were a team heading into championship weekend after the regular season was over. They were a team that was in the college football playoff conversation with just 1 loss. You know who else was in there? Ohio State. Heading into that last weekend of the college football season, they were a contender. Michigan won that game. We know they can beat a good team. And go right on down the list. We mentioned Washington. What about Texas? Texas beat Alabama earlier in the year. What is Alabama? A 1-loss conference champ. They are a CFP contender just by prototype. We know Texas can beat a good team. Alabama beat Georgia. Undefeated Georgia. Alabama beat them in the conference championship game. We know they can win a big game. You know what Georgia didn't do? They didn't beat anybody that was a contender this year. That's why they're out. You know what Ohio State didn't do? They didn't beat anybody that was a contender by the end of the year. That's why they're out. And Florida State, not to their own fault, they didn't beat anybody that was a contender this year. Their best win was a 3-loss LSU team. Second best win, a 3-loss Louisville team. And then we're getting down here to the Clemsons of the world. We're getting down here to teams that wouldn't even be able to sniff the college football playoff this year. And so I think a lot of people are trying to make this about, oh, this is your opinion and this is how you feel about things, and oh, this is what they did. And what I would say is I think a lot of people are having feelings. They feel like Florida State deserved to be in there. They feel like by resume, Florida State's one of the best teams. And what I can tell you is I know Michigan, Washington, Texas, Alabama, they can beat the type of teams that are in the college football playoff. What I do not know, and what I would be going off of vibes and feelings for, is that Florida State could do it, because they didn't. They didn't all year.
You are going off vibes and feelings by subject. Yes, you are. So where do you draw the line for a contender? You said Georgia didn't beat any contenders. Ole Miss, Missouri,
they were a 2-loss team before the end of the year.
Though.
There's never been a 2-loss team.
You cannot deny that. You cannot deny that they're not 2 good teams.
What I'm getting
so
at
Louisville,
is a
how about the context?
An undefeated team by the end of the year is a contender.
How about the context? All right, I get it. Louisville's not a national title contender, right? I mean, look,
they lost to a 3-win
Pitt team. You could say TCU last year was not a national title contender, right?
Like they felt that way.
Okay, but even back then we didn't choose the best 4. Okay, so Louisville is not a contender. Still a damn good football team. I get it, they had a bad loss, but guess what? Florida State beat them with their 3rd-string quarterback.
Bad losses. They lost to an average average, very average Kentucky team in the last week of the year. Florida State fans want to be mad at something. They should be mad at Kentucky for not holding up, at Louisville for not holding up their end of the bargain against Kentucky. If Louisville wins that game, Kentucky loses that game, they go in, they're playing a one-loss team in the conference championship game, probably makes their win feel a lot better. But it's not, because we understand that Louisville is not that good of a football team. Not contender level, good football team, not contender level. That's been their schedule, and it's not their fault. I'm not trying to say this about Florida State, but what I am saying is there are assumptions that I would have to make about their ability to beat a very good football team. And we didn't even talk about, Jake, but the quarterback situation. Like, just based off of that alone, the committee is allowed to factor in injuries, like important information that you would make decisions on about somebody's ability to compete. And that's what they did. There's nothing in there that says they have to put in an undefeated Power 5 conference champ. Nothing says that. And so this is where we are.
Let's talk about the quarterback situation. Let's use another analogy. So, undefeated New England Patriots are playing the New York Giants. It's Tom Brady versus Eli Manning. And guess what? Why even play the game? The Patriots are even better. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time versus Eli Manning. And guess what? This is what makes football so great. And this is my biggest issue with it. It's not a bad analogy. This is my biggest issue with it. How did the Giants get there? They did not have a great record, right?
But how did they get there, though? Because they won in the postseason.
Sure.
They beat teams that were contenders.
And they had a chance to get, and they had a chance to get to the postseason.
There ain't that many spots, bro.
What makes football so great is you have so few games. And guess what? When you lose and when you make a mistake, that's why it's so painful. That's why this loss for Ohio State, Michigan is painful, is you have a fleeting opportunity, and guess what? There's a winner and there's a loser. The NBA doesn't have it. The MLB doesn't have it. Any individual game doesn't matter. In football, the individual games do matter. And winning can look 100 different ways. You have to win. Florida State ran the table, and they won. And guess what? Sure, yes, Louisville, you can make the point. They had a third-string quarterback, and they still beat a damn good Louisville team.
You want to talk about third-string quarterbacks and what you need to do to get into the college football playoff with a third-string quarterback, because I've been there before. Personally, you know what that quarterback needs to do? They need to throw for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. And you know what your starting running back should probably do? They should probably run for 8 yards a carry. And you know what your defense needs to do? They need to put a goose egg up there on the scoreboard. They need to stop a Heisman finalist running back who rushed for 418 yards just a couple weeks before, hold him to about 80 in that game. And then maybe people will say, well, damn, this team can compete in the college football playoff. And they didn't do that. It did not look like that.
Why play anything right now? We have just let the committee up here in the ether say, guess what? You guys get to choose the best 4. The best 4. Why is Georgia not in? Why is Bama not ranked? Why is Bama not ranked higher than the 4th place? Because we're saying they're the best 4. We like the Georgia win. Why isn't Bama number 2?
Because
you see what I mean? These are contradicting itself.
Texas had a head-to-head. It's not contradictory. We saw that play. We saw that game on the field.
But it's not. That doesn't matter, apparently, right? Because it's the best 4.
It all matters.
It's the best 4 based on feelings. Like you just said, it's the best 4 based on feelings.
Can we pull up Mark Carmen's comment real quick? Because I think he put this, summed it up pretty well for us. If we're going to talk about a team, 58th strength of schedule here, no wins versus a current top 12. Why would anybody schedule hard if all you have to do is go 13-0? It's the whole reason nobody ever took the Group of 5 champion seriously. It's the reason UCF has a banner up in their stadium after they beat Auburn in a bowl game. They thought they should be in, and they didn't get in because nobody respected the teams that they played. And Florida State's schedule is certainly much better than what UCF played that year. But the idea that they did not play a team that could sniff the college football playoff this year and beat them in a game, it's a no-go for me.
These are very gray areas and subjective lines of competitor versus non-competitor, strength of schedule. What's the difference between the 40 or the 60? You know what I mean? Like the difference between 1 and 4 in college football is equal to the distance between like 10 and 50, right? Like there is competitors, and then it's a little gray area, and then there's a big distance. Florida State did enough to have the chance to compete. That's my opinion. I know that if it was my team and my situation, I would say it's a team sport, and we would have had the chance